Hi, Angela Wolf here with the last of our Linda Tunic Sewalong with a pattern hack, of course. So maybe you don't want the sleeve with the button. How about switching it up to some lace and adding a knit cuff? Very easy to do. So first of all, let's talk about the different styles of lace. Some of the lace that you find might have a beautiful hem edge. That's perfect. You can just take your sleeve pattern, which I have here, and you're gonna want to add maybe 1 or 2 inches because the lace usually hangs a little bit lower. So measure from your shoulder to your wrist, or however long you want the edge of that lace, because remember, you're not going to be hemming that. And all you'd have to do is add that length to the bottom of this pattern and cut that out of lace using this as the hem. Here's another example of a beautiful finish on the end. So 2 ideas. But very common, you might find some lace that does not have that finished edge. For example, this. I bought this for St. Patrick's Day and I haven't made it into anything yet, but there's no finished edge. Okay, same with this one here. This is more bridal. So let me show you what you can do for that. Here I have leopard lace. This is my salvage. I left this on here so you could see how the edge is finished. So I'm gonna either have to turn this up or find something. And lace turned up doesn't look so good. So here is my fabric. I've cut out my pattern. And here's a cuff. So this is just a sport knit. Over here, I'm using a rayon knit on the dress form back there. So basically, this just fits to your sleeve, to your arm, to your wrist, and sew it to the sleeve. So cut out your pattern exactly the same as you would. I actually added 1 inch to this because I wanted mine to hang over the cuff. To design your cuff, take your fabric. You can make this any width that you want. So remember, it's folded in half. So take a piece of fabric, fold it in half, and lay it around your wrist, just like this. If you want it to be shorter, it could be longer, whatever you want, but there you go. Don't forget you're gonna need a seam allowance. So this is high-tech pattern making, right? I think that looks pretty good. So the next step you're gonna do is take your sleeve with right sides together, fold it in half. You're going to stitch from one end to the other. When you're stitching lace, just be careful not to stretch it while you sew. I've already done that here with a serger, which is, you could do that or a French seam if you want to enclose it. And I've pressed this. The next step you're gonna do is take your cuff with right sides together. So remember, it'll be like this on my arm, and stitch all the way down the edge, just like this here. So let's go to the serger. All right, now depending on what kind of fabric you have, you might want to use a 3-thread or a 4-thread overlock. I prefer, it really doesn't matter, 4 thread's just a little sturdier for your cuff. And just go ahead and stitch. I'm trimming a little bit since my cutting was a little bit crooked. And there you go. Notice how this stretches with the fabric. That makes it really nice, especially for your cuff to get around your hand, to get onto your wrist. So I'm folding this in half. Wrong sides together. And this is going to be my cuff. Lining up those seams, and I'm just gonna leave this to the side for now. I'll just put it on my arm so I don't lose it. There you go. So now, what do we do with the sleeve? I told you I've already sewn this seam, pressed it to the back side, just like we did in a previous episode. But if you look here, this has a lot more fabric than the cuff does. And it's really tricky to stretch this enough evenly, so what I like to do is baste it. So go ahead and use a straight stitch, change it to a stitch length of 5.0. And I'm gonna slide this in place. Go ahead and do a back stitch, and then stitch all the way around. See how I can push that fabric out of the way? That's just a little trick if you're ever trying to get inside of a really narrow hem too. Very easy to do. All right, again, don't use your thread cutters because you need this long tail here. And take your bobbin thread. Now I used a contrasting thread, which is white, but you can just barely see it on that lace. Maybe I should have used yellow, but hopefully you can see that. Give it a little pull, and it will evenly gather around your sleeve. If you didn't do a back stitch at the beginning, the whole thing will pull out and you have to do it over, so trust me, I've been there. All right, so there is my gathering. You see that okay? So now turn the sleeve right side out. I like to always double check how everything is fitting. So if I were to slide this on my arm, the cuff is going to go right here at the end. Take this, turn it under, and pull this off. Now you know that you're sewing it to the right way. Inside out, wrong side out. Here we go. Okay. Here's my seam, and here's the seam on my cuff. Now I am going to use a few pins here because I just need to keep this straight. I'm going to slide this fabric out just a little bit so I can see it as I'm pinning this in place. Again, gather as you go around. You can also stretch your knit just a little bit if it didn't gather enough or you're worried about it being even, but the gathering just helps you kind of make it where it's going to be even all the way around. So, all right, there we go. So now I'm just going to use another basting stitch because those are easy to rip out. You cannot use a straight stitch on this because it will pull. If you don't have a serger, we're going to do the basting stitch first, and then you're going to use a zigzag stitch, and that will be your final stitch. So again, I'm using a basting. Let's go ahead and attach these. Why do I baste it first? Well, because if for some reason it gathered wrong or the fabric folds, have you ever tried ripping out a serging stitch? It's a lot of fun, trust me. So this actually, if something gets screwed up or it doesn't look right, it's easy to rip out. All right, go a little bit further. And again, I'm stitching. This is the wrong side of the fabric. All right, I think we got it all the way around. So first, roll this over and make sure, see how it looks. Get rid of this. Now, by the way, this is a contrasting color so you can see it as well. I'm not sure I'd put those two together. So let's go to the serger real quick and give it one last little serge. It looks great. Again, if you don't have a serger, go do a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch or something where the fabric can stretch to go over your hand. Try to keep my hands out of the way here so you can see. And I'm just trimming down the extra fabric, going all the way around. Chain off, and let's see what this looks like. Turn this right side out, and here's my cuff. There's the gathering. It looks pretty even. You can hardly even tell it's gathered. That's what the gathering does, so instead of it being all on one side. Double check the fit. It slides over my hand just fine. Pretty cute. So I hope you enjoyed this entire sew along, including the pattern hacks, and I look forward to seeing what you're sewing.